What is up, everybody? Welcome to the Love Unscripted podcast. I'm your host, Joseph Wilson, and this is the podcast where we have unscripted conversations with millennials about relationships and dating. So I hope you all are having a great start to your week. Hopefully Monday is treating you well, and hopefully you had an opportunity to rest and relax over the weekend. We always preach self-care is the best care. So hopefully that you are taking time to take care of yourself, pour into yourself, recharge. Life is tough enough already. So don't feel like you have to always be pouring into other people without pouring into yourself. So take those weekends. Really, I encourage you, do something for you. Love is going to be there. Work is going to be there, but we need you here. So do whatever you need to get your mental right. Go relax outside, touch some grass, as they like to say. But whatever you do, find a way to pour into yourself. So I'm just excited to continue to have these great conversations. Last week, we had Coach Crump, and we talked about different ways that men can build relationships and support their family while in that pursuit of becoming an entrepreneur, hitting those financial goals, becoming the man that they want to be. So if you did not catch that episode, go ahead and pause this one. I don't mind if you stop, go listen to that one, Coach Crump, Chris Crumpler, and get those jewels and nuggets to be able to improve your life. Please share them with friends, family, whoever you feel moved to do it. And we'll continue on with those great conversations. So I do have an announcement. If you've been on my social media page recently, you have seen there is something that will be released in March, and it is my first book. It's called Flip the Script: From Lost to Love, and it's the 30-day relationship preparation journal that has introspective activities, journal prompts for you to be able to learn more about yourself so that you can be the right one when you find the right one. So if you haven't already heard, March 19th will be the release date. We have a lot more rollouts. We have some giveaways. I know people have been asking about the hoodies and the t-shirts. I have those coming, so don't worry. Just stay tuned, follow the page, follow the podcast, and you'll be the first to know when things are released. But today, we are going to continue with these great conversations. I'm really excited about this. Normally, I have one guest, but this is the first time I got not a one, not a double, but I have a triple header this week. So, fellas, please introduce yourself.
For those who don't know, my name is Beau. I am 1/3 of the Three Wise Men. I am the spiritual component of the Brothers of Wisdom, Knowledge, and Peace. For a little background about me, I'm born and raised in Brooklyn, New York. Went to college in Buffalo State. Lived in Atlanta for a couple years. Lived in Oklahoma for a couple years, and I now currently live in Indianapolis. My spiritual specialty is just spreading God's love in the best way, in the most positive way, in the most healthy way. So if you see me on social media, you might hear me say good morning, good morning, good morning, and making sure you fall in love with God in less than 1 minute and 30 seconds.
Awesome. Hello, my people. I am Kenald. I am the mental health piece to the Three Wise Men. Sometimes I call us the Three Wise Guys. I'm a father, a husband, and also a therapist. I'm a licensed clinical social worker based out in New York. I have my own private practice, and I'm also an author of a children's affirmations book called KJ, he's a reflection of me. I look forward to this dialogue that we're going to have. And I hope that you guys take in a lot of information and context that we bring to you.
Yes, bless up, y'all. So I'm Kareem. I'm the third member of the Three Wise Men, and I'm happy to be here with y'all today. So I'm a former public school educator. I taught high school for 7 years, and then I was a district coach. So I would go around the schools working with teachers and principals, helping them improve their school community and develop systems of collaboration, because we know sometimes collaboration is one of the most difficult things to do for people at all different age levels. So while I was doing that work, I learned a lot about myself as well. And then the last thing I want to share is like these two gentlemen that I have formed the Three Wise Men with. I'm born and raised in Brooklyn, New York as well. And that gave me a lot of my inspiration to become a teacher, because I grew up around a lot of brothers and sisters who, to me, were all geniuses, but we all went in different directions. And some of my fellow comrades who did not go in the direction of finishing school, they were not any less more intelligent than me or any of my friends who did go on to graduate with master's degrees and doctorates. So I felt like as an educator, I could be somebody who inspired those students who did not feel engaged to be in school. I felt like I could be a conduit to helping, them feel inspired.
Ooh, this is a variety panel. There's
Yeah.
lots of variety. Listen, we're going to be able to hit on a lot of great topics. I'm just feeling I feel positive energy with this one. I don't know what it is. Like, I just got to chill hearing y'all talk. So this is going to be good. I'm excited. So here's what we're going to do. This is how we're going to kick it off. We're not going to talk about politics, but I do want to steal something from the political realm. And it's the State of the Union. This is usually where the president gives an account of the affairs that he sees over the country and gives his synopsis on what he sees, what is, and hopefully where he hopes to take us. So, each of you, I would love for you to give us a State of the Union for romantic relationships in 2024. Where do you see them at?
Whew. I guess I'll go first. I think you have to do everything in God's perspective. Not trying to make it cliche, but where is God in the midst of all your relationships? Whether it's romantically, whether it's friendship, where is God? How is the person that you are getting to know? How are they getting you closer to God? Are they motivating you to get closer to God? Are they bringing the best out of you? Are they pushing you forward, or are they pushing you back? So my thing is, for the State of the Union being the spiritual aspect, I want everybody to start asking themselves, did God ordain this? Is God allowing me to be next to this person? Does God want me to be around this person? And is this person healthy for me? So where's God, and is this relationship healthy?
I like that. Bringing it to the mental health aspect, I I want to start off saying that, as much as we look at, this person is the one, our soulmate, we also have to look at, do I have the skills, the psychoeducational skills, the interpersonal skills to show up and be there for that person that I want to call a partner? Is more than just knowing the characteristics that you would like to see in that partner, but it's also the characteristics that you want to reflect in that relationship as well. For far too long, especially in the communities of color, we get that recognition of not being able to have these stable relationships. And we actually do, but we don't highlight those who do. We have to give flowers to those couples that we see that thrive. We have to give grace for those couples that may have some bumps in the roads. But it's all about skill building, having those skills that you can learn not only from the books, but podcasts, from seeing other people model it in front of you, going to workshops, going to therapy, because I'm here for the mental health piece. Going to therapy, you could do individual work and couples work at the same time to ensure that you are showing up as the best person for yourself and your couple in your partnership.
Nice. And yeah, to add the educational component to it, I say you have to be a continuous learner throughout your entire relationship, throughout your entire life as well, right? Because even in a relationship, people grow and change at different times, and we have to be able to continuously support who our spouse is becoming, and we also have to be able to support ourselves. And the way that we can support ourselves is through communication. And we live in a world where information comes at us at a rapid rate, faster than ever. So we have to be careful what information we're taking in and bringing in to our psyche and into our relationship philosophy. So like Beau shared, something that has been allowing me to center my wife and I to center our relationship a little bit more recently has actually been prayer. Right. And that's something that we've done off and on. We maybe done it for a couple of days, couple of weeks, but we've been much more consistent lately. And it's been doing a great deal to help our relationship evolve. So I think constant evolution, constant learning is extremely important.
No, you all hit on some great points. And man, I think there are a need for mental clarity in the relationship space. I think there's an increased need for education, and nobody even talks about the spiritual part. It is almost taboo to mention that. Like, I don't hear that being a first date question. Like, what's your spiritual life like? Like, they don't ask that. Or, when was the last time you were in therapy? Or have you even tried therapy? Or what are some books you're reading to better yourself? Those are all three components I think are missing when we look at romantic relationships, because it does take some internal work to an internal effort to bring those areas to the forefront. So here's my next question. What surprises you most about romantic relationships in this day and age?
For me, I think it's realizing how the further you get away from God, the more your relationship will crumble. And I had to learn that the hard way. So when I look at a lot of relationships, I'm realizing that people are not being truthful and honest about it. And I think, there's a scripture that says, a house that is built on sand will crumble, and a house that is built on a solid foundation will stand through the test of time. And when you look at some of these relationships, they're not built correctly. So there's no trust, there's no honesty, there's no communication. So when things hit them, it just starts falling apart. And that's where you see social media can easily make you think a relationship's supposed to be one way until you're actually in a relationship. You're like, yo, I didn't read this in a book, or this is not what I signed up for on social media. So I feel like the further away we get away from God and the further away we get from the core principles of what love is supposed to look like, we will fall.
Yeah. To add on to that, some things that surprise me, and it doesn't truly surprise me, but I see it often, is the unhealed trying to be in relationships. And we often or I'm often seeing that, people in relationships working as a couples therapist, individual therapist, a lot of people go into relationships hoping that relationship would heal them from whatever experiences they've gone through. And what happens is they're just merely bringing, what we call the baggage, bringing the baggage into the relationship. However, nobody's unpacking the baggage in a healthy way. So, when it comes to processing experiences, something I also talk to my clients about is, you may have processed that experience already, but you may have to reprocess that experience with that new psychoeducation, that emotional intelligence that you may have developed as you began to work on yourself. So, when it comes to these more current relationships, is about being more resourceful. People could become more resourceful, but what I see is oftentimes we don't give that grace, to our partner or to ourselves. We're quick to cut someone off and, seek some form of instant gratification somewhere else that could give you a temporary fix, but long term, now you're still bringing this new baggage into a new relationship, if there is a new relationship. So, we definitely need to focus more on healing, because that healing will also show us the insight and intuition that we need to prosper.
Yeah. We grew up in Canarsie. That's right next to Brownsville. And in Brownsville, they say never ran, never will, right?
Never ran, never
Never
will.
ran, never will. So the reason I say that is because, sometimes relationships could become very challenging. They could become overwhelming. And I think looking at social media, it seems like a lot of times people run away when things get tough. And that's understandable, right? That fight or flight. Even for myself, there's been times when, the relationship has become challenging and I didn't have the language to articulate my feelings. And therapy is something that helped me do that, right? I mentioned earlier, continuously growing, right? Beau mentioned spirituality, right? Prayer, God, all of those things. If those things are constantly present, then when those challenging times do come, it'll help you get through it. And those challenging times, we don't know how long they may last at times. But if we're centered on God, if we're centered on constantly learning, if we have therapy as something that we both embrace, then we won't run away when things get challenging. And we also have to recognize our challenges look different. We can't compare it to other people's challenges. Our challenges may be very unique to our personal situation, and we have to embrace our personal situation and not always look on social media or look within pop culture and feel like that's what our relationship has to look like, because we don't always know what's happening behind the scenes.
Mm-hmm. Thank you all for sharing those thoughts, because those are all surprising things to me as well. The state of relationships is not in the best spot. I think if we're honest and open and not try to live on the extremes of, oh, grandmama and them were 60 years and happy, or the worst possible relationship where you got done wrong 7 times in 7 marriages. Like, if we could try to be honest and see where we are today, it's not looking too good. And that's evidenced by the divorce rate, how many people are actually wanting to get married, and people's overall view and perception of marriage and romantic relationships is not in a positive state. But I think that conversations like the ones we're going to have are going to be what changes that. You know what? Something that has shocked and surprised me, that so many people, and we'll lead into our conversation, do not think that men talk to other men about relationships. So I picked you all because I want to have a very intentional conversation with some men about men, because we hear all the time that men are not taking accountability for their past and their actions. We don't hold our friends accountable, and we are not being the leaders and the voices of this space. And that's surprising to me, because here's something that we also have to break down, this get people behind the veil. One of the things is, I'm a believer that birds of a feather do flock together. And so when you operate in a space with people who are trying to better their lives, trying to do relationships the right way, we are not always going to be in proximity to some of the stuff that is happening out there. We're kind of shielded because I believe good character can block certain energies and certain people from having access to you. I believe that. So I want people to get behind the curtain today and be able to hear men talk about men topics, because people don't always get an opportunity to see how we're thinking. And I want there to be a more positive connotation around men conversations in relationships. And we have 3 areas that I think we need to discuss: education, mental health, and the spiritual component. So let's start with education. When we look at educational relationships and how men learn, what would be some ways that you all would say that men could better identify healthy and positive sources of education and information, rather than just going with what's popular?
So something that I would say is leverage your network. So Kenald is my brother. We grew up together. I know and understand some of the work that he does within his field, and just through speaking with him and just seeing the people that he's linked up with, people that he posts, I've been able to learn a lot about different people's perspectives when it comes to relationships in a way that I may have never paid attention to if I didn't have a friend like that. So I say first start like where you have the most connections, and that's through your friend network, and seeing where they might be able to point you in the right direction. And then from there, something that we've spoken about on our 3 Wise Men show a lot is finding something that that you can use within your relationship, whether it's some type of research. You have to seek the knowledge, right? You have to want to find that knowledge. You have to be proactive about it, and you can't be reactive, because if you remain reactive, then every time a situation comes up, you're not going to be able to handle it because your emotions are going to be getting the best of you. But if you're proactive, you're usually in a space where your emotions can be settled, right? You can be in a more controlled environment with your spouse or your significant other, and you can figure out a way to navigate challenging times instead of waiting for a challenging time or a conflict to arise to speak about all your emotions. It's better to address those emotions during a time when it's a little bit more calm and it's a little bit more strategic and planned. Of course, there's going to be moments where you can't control everything and you can't always plan to have conversations, but the more proactive you are, the better those conversations will end up turning out for the best of both of you and your relationship.
I like that. Be proactive rather than reactive. I don't know if y'all like to cook, but have y'all ever tried to cook a recipe and look it up at the same time? Like while you're actively trying to figure out, do I mix this with that? What I do is very scatterbrained. And most of the time, I look up the first thing that comes up rather than taking time to evaluate, do I even got the ingredients for this recipe? But finding information is the same way. Being reactive and going after stuff when you're in a panic, you could potentially find the wrong information or just go what's easy to grab versus what is actually true. So, fellas, what are some of your thoughts on that?
I agree with him. I think tying to the education is making sure that you're seeking knowledge that you probably never seek before, actually taking the time to read books and not only reading the books, but actually trying to apply it. You know what I'm saying? Because you can read all the books that you want, but if you don't apply it, you're just a person with a wealth of knowledge. So there's times that I might be able to read a whole book about love. And then as soon as I get into my relationship, everything that I read is out the window. Now you have to apply what you're reading. You have to, when it says, hey, listen to what she's saying, apologize. You know, sometimes you're not going to be able to understand these things until you build that muscle memory. You're like, oh, I read this somewhere. Oh, your girl yells at you. Don't yell back. Take the time, reevaluate the situation, question these things. Like I think there's this book that I read called Love and Respect, and it talked about there's something called a vicious cycle, something like that, and it started to click. Like, oh, this is what they're talking. This is how I don't feel I don't feel respect from my partner, so I don't give her love. And now we're going into this cycle where now it's kind of like, hey, if I do something wrong, I'm gonna apologize to you. I'm gonna reassure you that I love you. I'm going to make sure that you feel appreciated and respected so that I can get what I return. But like just seeking and making challenging yourself to be better. Um, and just aligning yourself with people that want to go to that next level. You know what I'm saying? So I can agree with Reem on that when it comes to that educational perspective. A little bit of a spiritual one. I think it's more so just aligning yourself with men that will hold you accountable. I think a lot of times we don't find men that are like-minded or want to get to another level. And because of that, we fall short. Like once you get out the hood, you're supposed to influence your friends to want to leave the hood as well, not go back and still laugh about the same thing. Like the older you get, the wiser you got to get. You know what I'm saying? That's in Proverbs. Proverbs talks about wisdom. Like that's why people say if it walks like a duck, it quacks like a duck. You don't always have to be a product of your environment because a lot of us came from broken homes and we need to be better. And if people are not seeing KK and Reem living a married life and showing the positivity of that, they're going to be like, yo, marriage is stupid. But these brothers exemplify what marriage is supposed to look like. You know, everybody has their battles, but when I see them, I'm like, okay, I can't send them this joke because they're married. You know what I'm saying? They're not gonna find this funny. I might be able to send it to my single friends, but I can't do that with my married friends. Like, you
You
pick
can
and
send it,
choose.
just don't send it after 10.
Yeah, hey, you know what I'm saying? But it's spiritually, you got to grow up too. That's why they say when I was a boy, I thought like a boy, but now I'm a man, I act like a man. Uh, and that's the mentality. Like you have to grow up some point as a man to be like, I got to step up. So instead of saying, yo, I just want to be a boyfriend, I want to be a husband. You know what I'm saying? Like that's what God wants us to be, is to be husbands, is to be kingdom men that are leading the future, the next generation. There's not a lot of kingdom men in our community, and that's why you see a lot of boys being left behind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I definitely want to add to that, conversate to this conversation when it comes to And you know, Joe, I like when you brought up, like, you know, men, we're not, it's not highlighted that men talk to other men about relationships. And part of it is not that people don't know because they don't see it, it's just that we don't often, as men, we don't share that we're talking to other men about it because of the
Mm.
stigma that's connected with it. You know, oftentimes we talk about, hey, when we go to the barbershop, that's where we kind of, you know, talk about things like we're usually talking about sports there. We're not really talking about diving deep into certain things because a lot of times in the barbershops, you may not truly know that person sitting next to you and you don't want to open up and be vulnerable in front of someone that you're not, you know, too sure who they are and their intent and even how knowledgeable they are around the things that you experience. But something that I see that that kind of gravitates us as men is when we begin to hone in on our values, we begin to restructure our circles because
Mm.
now our circles begin to reflect our values, things that are important to us, you know, people that are important to us, relationships that are important to us. We begin to grow closer to them and we begin to cut the fat in our relationship, in our life, when it comes to more benign, you know, situations. So, you know, as far as the value goes, it's about that applying what you learn. Sometimes we get caught in this analysis paralysis where we're like looking up, we're reading, we're listening, we're doing all of the things we need to do to educate ourselves, but we're not applying it. So you may look at the recipe and have everything there, but it's like, you know what? I'm still going to call Uber Eats, even though I went through the refrigerator, through the cabinets, and ensured I had all the ingredients, but I didn't apply it. And sometimes it's just that willpower. Sometimes is that stigma. Sometimes there's this term that's floating around that, you know, some guys are being called simps for being a little bit more vulnerable. You know, but it's like, you know, we have to begin to lock into the values and allow that to lead us because that's going to give that we're going to go through pain through it and struggle, but that's the good pain that we're going through because there's going to be a positive outcome that comes back to us as we apply it.
That's good stuff. You have to not only receive the information, but apply it. And here's the thing, we know this from the clinical space. You have to do a certain intervention for a certain amount of time to start seeing the results. It's not just a one-time thing. It's not that, oh, I do it every other time when I feel like it. No, you have to do it consistently to where it becomes not just a habit, but part of who you are and no longer is a reactionary thing, but it's second nature. My default is to do a healthy skill rather than to respond how I normally would. I love that. So let's look at this. Manhood is always being discussed. How men should show up in the world and especially in relationships. We are always being taught, we're always being given messages, we are always being educated on what a man is and how we should be. And along the way, we have received messages that were not true about education. We were told you're a nerd, a square, or if you don't have some type of advanced degree, you're not worth nothing. We've been taught messages about mental health. Don't cry, be a man, don't open up about your feelings. We've been told messages about spirituality. We don't need any type of spiritual connection. You just live one, you just have this one life to live it up. It don't matter what happened. Don't worry about the consequences. We've been given all of these messages from a young age. And along the way, we have picked up bits and pieces of messaging, education, so to speak, that is not beneficial to our well-being. How do we go about unlearning some of these messages that we were given over the course of time so that we can exemplify true manhood?
I'll say for me, I didn't really start looking at manhood differently until about 2021. And the only reason why I started looking at manhood differently is because my supervisor at the time happened to be a pastor. And I remember having a conversation with him one day, and I said, "Man, my woman needs to pray for me." And he says, "My God, that's incorrect. It's actually the man that's supposed to pray for the woman. The man is supposed to cover the woman. Yes, you want a woman that can pray for you, but you got to understand your position that God wants you in this world." So I had to unlearn this concept that, a woman got to do this. Like, God created man first for a reason, and he created him to be strong. He created him to be wise. He created him to be a leader, and you can't be a follower. And it took me having to really understand who God is and what God wants for us. When the man is not centered in his relationship with God, he will always feel lost. When a man is not centered in his principles with how he walks, how he talks, and he's not aligned himself with God, he's gonna fall short. So from my perspective, I think it's, what is your relationship with God? I think one thing I had to learn is a lot of men who don't have a relationship with God are not trying to seek a relationship is because they don't want to be held accountable, right? Because if you really listen to what God wants you to do, there's a lot of things we ain't gonna be doing in our relationship, whether it's marriage or whether it's a friendship or a situationship. When God says, "Yo, husbands, if you love your wives, you're gonna love them," because a real man is not gonna hurt himself. Because if you hurt yourself, you're hurting God and you're hurting your wife. All that stuff, it goes back to what the word says. And I had to really start reading and really start saying, like, all right, God doesn't want me to yell at my wife or not love her. He wants me to love her unconditionally. So I had to learn, I had to really unlearn that stuff. And I started reading, books about, what a kingdom man is. A kingdom man is somebody who is stable. A kingdom man is somebody that prays over his family, covers his family in every aspect. And your wife is your helpmate because she's your rib. And, it took me really understanding what God wants men to be. It's to be the leaders, to be the forefront. And you can't take that back step. Like, we're going to have pressure. You're going to be faced with obstacles. But God gave us broad enough shoulders so that we can handle that. So it's strengthening your relationship with God that will have you look at manhood different. And you won't get caught up in the alpha male or the beta male. You'll be like, "Yo, I'm a kingdom man." And a kingdom man is someone who stands firm when the way that God wants him to. And I'm still unlearning a lot of things that I thought were supposed to be man-like. But now I'm like, all right, what does God want me to be? Because at the end of the day, he has the final say. And if I'm not aligned with him, then I'm going to always fall short. So I think this one quote that I remember, it says, how they say men can't cry, but I remember somebody says, "God is a man with a woman's heart." So that means men can be vulnerable, men can love, and it took me a while to process that because at one point I felt like I didn't need to be vulnerable. I didn't need to express my feelings until I started really understanding that God wants me to live a life of freedom and peace and joy. So,
Unlearning what that carnal way of looking at manhood, the very basic, superficial, and striving for something higher. I love it. What about you, other brothers?
It's like, I know we used a couple food analogies tonight, so I'm gonna throw one out there. It's like a detox, right? When you detox your body, you start to feel uncomfortable. Your body is like, "What's going on?" But in the long run, it's going to be for your best benefit after you go through this detox. But you got to cleanse. You got to make sure you get rid of some of those bad habits, those toxins, any of those toxic traits that you may have been bringing into the relationship. Once you're able to embrace that discomfort, then you know that you're headed in the right direction. So, KK used the example of a word that's going around, simp, right? You may feel like, "Damn, man, I want my homies to feel like I'm a simp." You know what I'm saying? You like, your ego starts to talk to you. Your ego starts to tell you all of these things like, this is what you need to be. You gotta still be the same old Kareem. You know what I'm saying? The same old Merge, the same old Slim. Like, you know what I mean? That's who you are. But you have to be able to understand that you're on a journey, and on that journey, you're gonna feel uncomfortable. That means maybe some of your friends may feel uncomfortable, right? But you know that in the long run, everybody who is headed in the same direction that you are, even though your journeys are going to look different, if your mindsets are similar, as time goes on, those relationships will continue to grow. Those relationships with friends will continue to flourish, but it does go, you will go through some periods of discomfort. And I'm not saying everyone has to, everyone's journey is going to be different. So I'm married, right? But most of the people that I grew up with, they are not married. And there were times when I would look around and I'd say, well, no, this is just how it is. Like, you know what I'm saying? We moving and grooving, we single, but then I decided to take the step to get married. And there's times when I didn't really realize that I grew up in an environment where marriage wasn't, I'm not going to say it wasn't valued, but I don't think we understood the value of marriage. We didn't understand the value of commitment. And we all get, we all get to that point of understanding in different ways. I'm very grateful. And also, I've had to recognize over time that a part of being in a relationship is understanding that there's going to be conflict. And one of the ways that I always I try to always remember the conflict that I have within myself, right? Because there's times I want to do things and I let myself down. So why, I'm not saying that I should be let down, but why wouldn't I think somebody that I'm with might let me down as well if I let myself down, right? But when we form that union, we have to be able to communicate in those moments, and language is the bridge between thought and action, right?
Mhm.
So I have to develop the language that allows me to express myself in order for my actions to align with my thoughts and my words.
Man, so before we go to Kenald, I want to hit on something that you said. You mentioned detoxing, getting rid of some information, getting rid of some line of thinking. Uh, one of the things I love to do is debate. I like to debate. I like to have intellectual dialogue about philosophy, religion, and everything in between. But one of the things that people, anybody who has debated me or had conversations, will unequivocally say Joseph is okay admitting where he has a gap in knowledge and either has to reconsider or is comfortable. You know what? I got to change what I thought. I have to let go of that line of thinking in order to be able to take on something that is indeed factual. We can't get so caught up on holding on to what we've always known and always grown up doing at the detriment of ourselves, at the detriment of our families, at the detriment of our partners, at the detriment of our children. Like, we can't hold on to something so tight that we're unwilling to change. And what I'm hearing you say is like there is a detox process, especially when it comes to unlearning things, that some of that stuff has to go and we have to no longer think the same way. That's tough. Like, that's challenging, especially when you've done it. And here's the thing. Think about relationships. If what you've always been doing has worked for you,
Right.
but it hasn't always been healthy, you have really little incentive to change.
Yeah.
So that's just something I wanted to throw out there. Kenald, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm gonna piggyback off of that, and I think that the detox, especially as we start this new year, this is where a lot of people are trying to reshape things. You got the New Year's resolutions, you got, people are eating clean, they're exercising more. And what is it? It's all about discipline. It's all about discipline, and part of it is kind of creating a new lifestyle. So as you were talking about like what's manhood, it's hard to define it if you're not going to speak more to what culture does this person belong to, because culture, it's like, we have to be culturally competent, as they say, but we have to be culturally sensitive to what a person may identify as manhood, right? So that's something we have to keep. When it comes to mental health, we do an inventory on a patient or a client where it's a biopsychosocial. And it may not be identified in there, but spirituality is also part of the biopsychosocial. We're looking at, your physical, your biological makeup. We're looking at, your heritage, your family makeup. And it doesn't necessarily mean, okay, you're Caribbean and we're just looking at this country from the Caribbean you're from. We're looking at, did you grow up in an intact household where both parents were there? Or was it a single parent? Were you in a foster home? Like, all of that is being calculated in our psychosocial makeup and genetics. And we have to keep all of that in mind as we look at what does manhood look like for you. Because now, if the bar is at a certain level because of your life experiences, you may look at a man much differently than someone else who the bar may be a little bit higher or lower. So all of that is important. Right now, I'm working in a middle school, and oftentimes the young men get caught up in situations and they're in between, like, all right, that peer pressure, that cultural difference, and what my conscience may say. And they're like, Mr. Bernard, I don't know what to do. And I said, you know what? Lean into what you think a gentleman would do, and they kind of like create their own image and definition of it, and they follow through in something that they feel more confident in. So that's part of the values, as I mentioned earlier. That's important. So accountability, discipline, values, all of that is important, especially when it comes to culture as well, when it comes to seeing what kind of man we identify to be. The detox and cleaning up, as we talked about, I think you mentioned habits, right? We have to create the new habits. And part of the new habits is repetition. Sometimes we have to do something called reality testing. Something that I love to do with clients is role playing. Because I can educate you on it. You're like, yeah, yeah, yep, that makes sense. I'm like, all right, now let's create an actual scenario where you have to practice this. So now, when you actually face this, just like me and Kareem, we used to play basketball together. So we running drills, we're practicing, and we knew that if we perfect this drill in the game, we'll be able to execute. So that's the mindset. And I try to bring it down to those simple terms for men, because we often like to talk about sports. And I'm like, yo, we're going to do a drill in this session. And that's what we do. And usually what feedback I get back from those clients are, I faced the situation, I felt comfortable because I already had an opportunity to practice it, so it felt natural and organic when I did it. So these are some things that I think are essential for us as men to do. We have to practice what we are learning, and we have to practice with somebody we trust. A lot of my friends, they get free therapy. Would they go out and look for a therapist? Probably not. But they come to me because they feel comfortable. And sometimes they talk about therapy negatively, and say, I don't know how people see a therapist. A therapist, they must be crazy if do that. I'm like, well, I just provided you therapy, and you're not crazy, right? As you may identify others to be. And I just gave you some feedback. I helped you with insight. I gave you some tools. You just experienced therapy. And that's all it's about. It's about having, like, just like you may have a personal trainer in the gym, you just have a psychological trainer that works with you and giving you those exercises for your mind.
Oh, well, this is so rich. Practical things, practical
Mm.
tools. So when we are looking at manhood, I ain't gonna lie, for me, and I'll just speak for me, at times it does get tough. It is challenging trying to balance my own self-concept and self-image of what manhood is and trying to operate in a world that has its own definition can be tough. But one thing that I will say that has made it easier is this idea of community, not doing it by myself. So when it comes to each of your specialty, y'all like the Infinity Stones, how can men build community for each of your specific areas? Education, spiritual, mental health. How can we build community?
I think you got to be vulnerable, and you have to say to yourself, yo, I don't know this. Like for me, I'll be honest with you. I'm from Brooklyn. Like I grew up in an apartment. I wasn't like KK and Kareem where they had the house. I had an apartment. You know what I'm saying? But here's the thing, though. I didn't grow up with the typical male role models that most kids grow up with. So I'm not a handyman, right? At all. Like you ask me to fix something, I'll be like, yo, I got money, I get it fixed. The other day I joined this program called Boys to Men, and it's teaching young men how to go from boys to men. One of the mentors, I just so happened to be listening to his conversation, and he's like, yo, I fix houses. I walked over to him and I said, hey, look, can you teach me the basics of how to fix things in a house? But for me to do that, I had to be vulnerable because I had to want to learn. Like I had to realize there's a flaw that I have, the things that I have flaws on, I need to seek and I need to figure out, hey, how do I build? Iron sharpens iron. You know, that's not a cliche thing. That's biblical. Iron sharpens iron. Like you want to keep people around you that will help you sharpen your skills. So when you say, how do you do that? I have to say, hey, look, I'm not good at this. Hey, KK, I know that you're good at making sense and making logic out of relationships. Kareem, I'm not good at um, educational stuff. How can I become a better writer? How can I do this? I saw how you raise your kids. I see how you talk to them. How can I get that insight? Like you have to seek that, but you got to be vulnerable enough to say, "Hey, I don't have it together." And the more you're able to do that, the more. But you have to do this with people you trust, not some regular Joe Schmo. Like you have to do this with people that you trust, and they're not gonna take take something that you tell them. They're not gonna throw it in your face because real men they want to build you up. You know what I'm saying? And it might be a running joke, but at the end of the day, your success, right, is my success. You know what I'm saying? We the three wise men. Our success, like if KK's winning, hey, K, that's my man. He's my brother. If Reem is winning, that's my man. He's my brother. I don't repost a lot of people, but I'll repost them because those are my brothers that are making strides and they're doing things to make the world a better place. So you got to be vulnerable and you got to be willing to share stories or share those uncomfortable topics. You know what I'm saying? Like for instance, me and Kay, we're cousins, right? So I'll call him and be like, yo, cuz, let me pray for you. You know what I'm saying? Like on his birthday, he's vulnerable to be like, he's vulnerable. He has that comfortability with me to be like, go ahead. He ain't gonna fight it. You know what I'm saying? Pause. He's gonna be like, all right, cuz, go ahead, lead the prayer. You know what I'm saying? Because he feels that's what you're good at is praying, right? So I'm going to let you be able to cover me in that aspect. So it's that's my theory when it comes to men building community is finding people that you want to uh, resemble or you want to obtain the knowledge that they have.
Yeah.
I'm waiting for my birthday prayer. You know what I'm saying?
I got you. I got you.
Yeah, I mean, I had to let
Oh
you finish.
man. Oh man.
Yeah, but for me, just thinking about. Well, actually, can you just say the question one more time? I want to make sure.
Yeah. So, how can men go about building community?
Yeah, so I can be fully transparent. This is something that I did not really focus on until I left New York City. So I moved to Atlanta about a year and a half ago, and even when it came to education, I was just like naturally a friendly person. I just naturally network, but I was never really intentional about it. And it's not until I moved, I was completely out of my comfort zone that I had to begin to be intentional about it. So I have been intentional about furthering my education and my learning and building community when it comes to my professional life. But to be really transparent, that's something that I do need to be much more intentional about is building community when it comes to fatherhood and being a husband. Um, it's not something that I'm intentional about learning on my own, but I'm not intentional about learning in community. Does it happen? Yes, it happens. But I feel like that's my next step. I've been seeing how it's helped me grow professionally and building new relationships. and receiving like a certain type of knowledge that I would not receive if I was not in community. So that's something that this year and moving forward, I'm intending to be more intentional about, because I have not, just to be completely honest with you, but I know it's necessary.
Yeah.
Can I say something real quick? Um, well, just saying, going off of what Reem said, a lot of times that I've wanted to be like intentional about speaking to certain men to gain their knowledge. There's a lot of men who act like gatekeepers
Mm.
and they don't want to share that knowledge. So it makes somebody like me who like I'm not a hood dude, but I ain't no sucker. You know what I'm saying? So I'd be like, yo, I don't even want to mess with you. You know what I'm saying? Because now you trying to act like you don't like you're not willing to share that information. You know what I'm saying? So there's a lot of I think just use that discernment and being very intentional about who you're asking the knowledge to. Because if you ask the wrong person, they might push you away to the point where you be like, yo, that's why I don't even ask people for nothing. Because now you acting funny with the information that you got. So forget you, and now you go into your bubble, and now you like, yo, I'm gonna just figure it out on my own.
Yeah. To what you just said there, Bo, when you see somebody being a gatekeeper, it's a reflection that there's like some kind of insecurity they have, right? And it takes a lot of emotional intelligence for not only for you to recognize it, but for them to recognize that as well. And for us as men, because we've been brought up for the most part, like, don't cry, don't express yourself like that, just kind of shake it off, keep pushing. We have a limited emotional vocabulary. So, when it comes to, people opening up the gate, they're more resistant because they may feel like you're gonna take my spot, or they're gonna feel like you just gonna shine more than I am, or whatever it may be. But they don't realize, like, to get somewhere fast, as they say, you go by yourself. To get somewhere far, you go with a team, you go together. So they don't see the benefit of it. I like when I face people like that, because I end up challenging them to a way to make them think differently about it. They may not change the way they think about it in that moment. It's like one of those medications that got the slow release. It may take some time for them to realize it, but I know I dropped that seed over there, and I'm gonna let the life experiences just water it, and they're gonna come to that realization. But bringing it back to like that question about us men building the community, I think transparency is essential for us to build a community when it comes to men. Just like the way social media is constructed, a lot of people are sharing their success, but they're not sharing their challenges, their failures. Sometimes they will show, like, I show my failures because I know I have this success right here to kind of blanket it, but they're not going to show you it without it. But if we share even our struggles, our failures, that humanistic aspect, it makes people feel more confident to try something different. Because I know oftentimes, because people see me as a therapist, they'll say, like, you probably make no mistakes, and like, you have every tool that you need to just be this perfect human being, and I'm far from that. I make tons of mistakes daily, but I learn how to take accountability and work on what mistakes I have done. I mend my issues with the person. I try not to hold on to it. I try to mend it. It's up to them. If I hurt somebody and then I apologize, they don't really want to accept it. But I know that I put the olive branch out there, so it could, so we should be able to move forward. Working as a black male in corporate America, oftentimes there's a lot of you know disparity and inequity going on, and I could just sit on that and allow that to kind of make me this angry guy, or I could work around it. I could work around it and communicate it differently. So that's what I try to do. There's this defense mechanism that is I feel is very effective for people. Is called sublimation, and an example of it is like, you have an angry child who just has all this pent up energy and negative energy, and you put them on a football field so they could be like a linebacker, defensive back, and they could use it tackling. That's sublimation. I'm taking this negative energy, recycling it, and putting it into something positive. So as far as the men community, we just need to be more transparent. We need to begin to expand our vocabulary around emotion, so we could begin to tap into what we're really going through versus we're channeling everything through anger. So once we begin to expand that, we're going to have we're going to just continue to change and level up, hit these new paradigms. And once we also hone into our values, we're going to indirectly and directly begin to create a new world and environment for ourselves and our family.
Oh man, that's some good stuff. And here's something else that I'll add. Having a community around you is like a cheat code. It's a cheat code because I've been able to sidestep a lot of hardship and heartache by learning from the experiences of people in my community. And it does take vulnerability to go out there and put yourself out there to be seen as you are, and then have people support you. There's a lot of people who have difficulty being supported. They have no problem driving in the middle of the night 5 hours to help someone with a flat tire, but they are going to be hell-bent on not calling somebody when they have a flat tire. No, I'll figure it out. I'll figure it out myself. Like, they don't want to. So we have to be willing to be vulnerable. We have to be willing to put ourselves out there. And here's another thing. Find a community where it's reciprocal, as in you pour into people and they pour into you. There's been a prayer line that I've been a part of since like 2013, and I've been on there long enough to be at this point where I've been listening for a long time, but now I can contribute because I want to give back to the community. I don't want to just be a taker and get filled every morning, but I want to pour into others. When you have that type of community, everybody wins, everybody gets what they need, and everybody is supported. And I think men, we definitely need that in this day and age. We don't have to gatekeep. One of the philosophies I have is the people who are going to be part of my community are going to have a lot of things in common. And one of them is being generous givers. And think about what that looks like. And let's talk social media terms. Sharing a post. Like stuff like that. Do the people in your community share something simple as a post, or share a flyer, or connect you with certain people? Do they try to make you buy a course before you can get some information? Like, what does that look like? I know for me, I'm going to give. And the people that I work with, it's a small group of people, but it's always reciprocal. It may not always look like a dollar for dollar exchange, but there's reciprocity there. Either they're going to be a listening ear, or they're going to give me some information to where I can make a move. But either way, the community got to be reciprocal. And I think men, we got to make that a priority so that we can be better in life. So we're going to go ahead and transition into our last segment of the show, which is Flip the Script. And that's a segment of the show where our guests provide a simple tool or strategy for a challenge or a scenario that we discussed in this episode. So you all ready?
Yes, sir.
Let's do it.
All right. So there may be a brother out there listening and be like, yo, like I've been slipping. I haven't been my best self in the area of spirituality, education, and my mental health. What is one tool or strategy you would give them to be able to start the journey of having wellness in each one of these areas?
I would say start with an asset-based approach. We all have strengths and we all have areas we need to grow in, but sometimes we might be too hard on ourselves. So let's find the area that we are strong in and try to leverage that and build off of that strength in order to uplift some of the areas that we need to grow in. So for instance, if you're somebody who really likes, watching Netflix or watching shows, try to find something that is aligned to that area that you're trying to grow in. Because you already like watching shows, you already like reading books, you like consuming information. Just redirect the information that you're consuming and figure out how that might help you in the area that you're trying to grow in. So I'd say leverage your strengths in order to uplift those areas that you're trying to grow in. Don't be too hard on yourself.
For me, I would say, I'm gonna promote my Bible study group, but I host a Bible study every Wednesday, 7:30 p.m. And that is just a bunch of believers. I'm not a pastor, I'm just a vessel for the Lord. And the thing is, it's a room full of like-minded individuals that want to get closer to God. So, fellas, it's seeing another man that has probably been through everything that you've been through and just being able to speak in a language that you understand. Like, I'm not too churchy. I'm a regular dude from Brooklyn that is learning how to get closer to God, and I want to share that with other men. So if I can give brothers an opportunity to reach out, you know what I'm saying? Don't be afraid to even join a community that you feel comfortable with that talks about God and wants to build a relationship with God and wants to help you get closer to God. So, yeah.
Right. So a tool that I would share that could be helpful for somebody going through a journey like that. A tool that I usually give a lot of my clients is called the lifespan wheel. And the lifespan wheel is like this. You have total control over it, but at the same time, it has practical things that are important to you in your life. So it might be finances, work development, health, family, relationships, different things that are important to you. Now, this allows you to begin to take an inventory about what's important to you and what you value and how you want it to look. You give yourself your own rubric and grade on how you're doing in those areas and try to make it measurable. How will you know that you're doing good in that area? How do you know you're struggling in that area? Making it measurable. But now at least you have I make the clients utilize it as a compass. Now you have a compass for to help you, like following the sun, to help you know what direction you're going. If you're trying to head north, this is the compass you're using. You're trying to head south, that's the compass you're using. So utilizing that, at least you'll have direction. Because when I get new clients, a lot of them say, I don't even know where to start. But if you start by kind of reevaluating and taking inventory of your foundation, at least you will have the direction on where you want to go.
And there you have it, fellas. Thank you for joining me this week.
Yo, we appreciate you, my brother.
Yes, sir.
Please let everybody know where they can find you on the internet and social media.
If you guys want, I'm on Instagram, CIDDY0612. That is my main page, page that I'm trying to build up. My backup page is called A Word with Beau, and that's on Instagram and on social and on Facebook. You can find me Francois Beau. That's Francois Beau, FrancoisBeau, and that's on Facebook and TikTok. I don't know because I don't really use it, but those are my main three pages that I use.
Yeah, you can find me on Instagram, Professor X. I spell professor incorrectly on purpose. PROPHESSUH_X. You can also find me at KAREEMMCQUILKIN_EDU. That's Kareem McQuilkin _EDU. And then we got the 3 Wise Men _global. The number 3 Wise Men _global is our team page. And we're going to begin that up and running more consistently. That's where you can find us. And, you could also find us, in a hood near you soon.
It might be easier to find us in the hood near you.
Right.
Yeah. So I am Kenald. You can find me on Instagram with @I am Kenald, Kenald. You could also, if you're looking for therapy, consultation, any information around mental health, you could reach me through there. You can reach me through my website at www.kbcounselingservice.com. Also, I have a children's affirmations book, and Reem, you got to put your book out there too.
Yeah.
Children's affirmation book called KJ. He's a reflection of me. You can find it on Amazon and Barnes and Nobles. What else? As mentioned, I'm a licensed clinical social worker based out of New York.
Yeah. I'll throw my book out there. Good looks, bro. My attitude is gratitude, that I helped co-author with my daughter. She's 6 years old. It's all about having gratitude in life. And then I also, my educational journey has taken me to We Do It for the Culture, which is a social emotional learning curriculum rooted in the 5 elements of hip hop. So you can follow us at SEL4 The Culture on Instagram. A lot of great learning for kids in grades 6 to 12.
And I will put all of their information down in the show notes. So don't go click it right now while you're driving. I'm not responsible for your insurance deductibles. So please head on over to iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher Podcast, comment, rate, subscribe. If you're in podcast land, please head on over to Love Unscripted HD, where you can see the full video for this episode. And I just thank everybody for taking time to be able to listen to this episode today. Also, look out, March 19th. Flip the Script from Lost to Love, the 30-day relationship preparation journal will be available. And as we always say, we may not have all the answers, but we will have the conversation. I'll see y'all next time. Peace.
Bless.
Right.